Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me just say, sometimes you make money without even making a move. I think that that's the case today, right? I've made a couple of videos here online where I've picked Vladimir Klitschko to beat Anthony Joshua. Understand, the more hyped Anthony Joshua gets, the more people impressed by his knockouts who decide that they're going to bet on him and shift the odds. In my opinion, the better it is for people on my side of the aisle taking his next opponent. Now, here online, the Joshua bubble, and I don't mean to be Scrooge here right before Christmas, just someone talking truth to power, right? The Anthony Joshua bubble has gotten so inflated that you have people like Carl Froch here on the internet. I encourage you to Google his interview after the fight, talking about how Anthony Joshua is going to beat Vladimir Klitschko. He took out Eric Molina. Can we agree that Eric Molina doesn't have anything close to Vladimir Klitschko's jab? Doesn't have anything close to Vladimir Klitschko's career. Simply put, if Eric Molina were in the ring with Vladimir Klitschko, he would be a prohibitive underdog. In fact, you know, as a contender, he did give Wilder some very tough moments, right? But I would say as a contender, Eric Molina is really a fringe contender. So at the risk of making the comment section to this video really hot and bothered, because I understand Anthony Joshua is like Saul Alvarez, right? He's that fighter who has a crowd. He's one of the most popular people in boxing, right? People who make videos here online like myself know that if we mention the name Anthony Joshua, just like if we mention the name Manny Pacquiao, we're going to get over 1,000 views on the video. But let's deal in the world of fact, not hyperbole. Who is the toughest opponent today? This is post Eric Molina. Who is the toughest opponent today Anthony Joshua has faced? Is it, and I'm just going to name some credible fighters out there. Is it Joseph Parker? Is it Alexander Povetkin? Is it Andy Ruiz? Is it David Haye? Is it Luis Ortiz? Is it Deontay Wilder? Is it Tyson Fury? Is it Kubrat Pulev? Is it Carlos Takam? Right? Understand, people are getting hot and bothered over Anthony Joshua, and he hasn't fought most of the top contenders, right? In fact, the toughest fighter he's fought is either who? Dominique Breazeale, Eric Molina, Dylan White, Charles Martin. If Vladimir Klitschko were to fight one of those four, where on Vladimir Klitschko's list of best opponents would any of the four be? Right? I would argue that Anthony Joshua is not even fighting the best in his country of Europe. Right? Just understand that. Let's also talk about the mechanics of this fight. And by the way, for those looking for the highlights, I actually have them in my favorites folder. Hey babe, thanks. I actually have them in my favorites folder here online on YouTube. Now, all I can say is Joshua has Molina, who knows Joshua hasn't gone 12 rounds, right? Hasn't in any professional fight. Molina is trying to force Joshua into the second half of the fight. So he's really fighting a defensive fight on the front end, right? Anthony Joshua gets him over by the side of the ropes. There's no sledgehammer Klitschko jab to keep him off, right? Eric Molina doesn't quite have Klitschko's one-punch punching power, so there's no huge punching power that's sudden that Joshua has to worry about. So Joshua throws a bunch of punches. It's the most aggressive I've seen Joshua. And Joshua lands a short right hand, right? The world changes for Eric Molina, right? Molina doesn't recover from the short right hand. He goes down. The fight is really over at that point. It's only because Eric Molina has a lot of heart and is a veteran that Eric Molina gets off the canvas, off a devastating knockdown that would have kept 90% of the heavyweight division on the canvas, right? But, okay. But, let's be clear here. The outcome actually hurts Anthony Joshua's professional development. How many rounds did he go in this fight? Under 3. Right? He did not go 3 full rounds in this fight. In other words, Joshua still hasn't made it to the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th rounds. Right? Unless you believe that Anthony Joshua is going to come out and blow out Vladimir Klitschko in the first 3 rounds of a fight. Right? Unless you believe that Anthony Joshua, who still fights upright. Don't believe me. Look at the fight footage. He's 6'6" and he's there in front of you. Right? He's not leaning, hiding. Right? Vladimir Klitschko, let's just say, is going to have a harder time missing Anthony Joshua with his jab than hitting him with the jab. Right? And so, unless Anthony Joshua comes out and finds a way to get in on Vladimir Klitschko early, and let's remember, the Corey Sanders fight is really before Klitschko figured out how to use length, right? Klitschko in that fight, you'll notice, is bent over, has his chin in front of his feet, right? That's a different fight style than Vladimir Klitschko has now. So unless you feel there's something special about a guy whose big fights are Dominique Brazil, Eric Molina, Charles Martin, Dylan White, right? Unless you feel there's something special about him where Klitschko's jab is going to be rendered irrelevant, where Klitschko's punching power is going to be rendered irrelevant, where Klitschko, a guy with more championship experience than anyone else in the heavyweight division today, is going to be overwhelmed by the moment and the crowd, right? Unless you believe all of that, then what this Eric Molina fight was really more inflation of the Anthony Joshua bubble, right? We all want to believe in Mike Tyson. We all want to believe that some guy is going to come and run roughshod through the heavyweight division, right? All I can say to you is that Mike Tyson in the 1980s fought far better competition, far better, than Anthony Joshua is fighting right now, right? Michael Spinks was unbeaten. Michael Spinks had beaten Larry Holmes, for crying out loud. Right? Michael Spinks was an Olympic gold medalist back in the day. Right? Anthony Joshua, quite frankly, on this resume, even though the fight's in his backyard, in my opinion at least, should be a big underdog against Vladimir Klitschko. Instead, he's the favorite. Instead, there's a frenzy online. This generation has YouTube. This generation has the internet. The hype now circulates around the globe a hell of a lot faster, thanks to social media, etc., and inflates much faster than it did back in the day. In my favorites folder here, I have an interview with Lennox Lewis, right? Somebody else did it. All I do is accumulate information. I have an interview with Lennox Lewis, where Lennox Lewis talks about how Anthony Joshua really is hurting himself by not fighting better opponents. Folks, as I've said in a previous interview, don't get blinded by the belt. The fact that he's a heavyweight champion shouldn't confuse you and distract you from the fact that he's only fought Charles Martin, Eric Molina, Dominique Brazil, right? Joseph Parker in fighting Carlos Takam and Andy Ruiz, both of those guys. Much better competition than anyone on Anthony Joshua's resume. So, forgive me here, folks. I'm unconvinced, right? First off, because Anthony Joshua hasn't even made it to the later rounds, I don't think he has any chance of getting a decision against Vladimir Klitschko, a guy with a much better jab, right? And much more experience than Anthony Joshua. So throw Joshua by decision out the window. I believe the only chance he has against Vladimir Klitschko is a puncher's chance. Good luck to him getting inside like he did against Eric Molina. I guarantee you, Vladimir Klitschko, who's accustomed to being the heavier-handed guy in fights, is not going to curl up and be defensive like Eric Molina was, right? Klitschko, an Emmanuel Stewart disciple, is going to be out there establishing a jab and throwing power shots behind it, right? So, you can call me Scrooge, that's fine, whatever. Bah humbug, right? You have a young heavyweight champion here who the people are buying into a bit more than they should. I'll be the first person to say, look, my tone will change when I see Anthony Joshua go out there and actually beat a Vladimir Klitschko, if that can ever happen. I don't see it happening here, right? This guy just hasn't fought the competition to warrant the kind of consideration that he's getting from people like Carl Froch, right? At this point, I just don't see how Anthony Joshua makes it to the last third of the fight against Vladimir Klitschko. I think we've been fooled by the savviness of Tyson Fury in going the distance against Vladimir Klitschko using lateral movement, right? And we've somehow then reached a conclusion that Vladimir Klitschko is past his prime. He isn't. I don't care what the calendar says. The guy still hits hard. The guy has far better skills than Anthony Joshua, right? Don't get fooled by great visuals against non-elite competition. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Let me point out the obvious here too. If Anthony Joshua had a better track record of going deep into fights, and it would have helped him, quite frankly, here, right? It definitely would have helped him here. Then Eric Molina would not have been as docile and as defensive as he was in the early part of this fight. It's because Eric Molina knew in the back of his head that this young guy had never made it deep in a fight. That Eric Molina's goal was really to prolong the fight. Let's just say Molina wouldn't dare fight this kind of fight against Vladimir Klitschko. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Let me also say too, and I don't say this lightly, if we're going to anoint AJ as the next big thing in the heavyweight division, shouldn't he be fighting Fury and Hay? How could he be the next big thing in the division when he hasn't fought most of the top contenders? Sonny Liston, he isn't at this point. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.